Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Let me call to order the meeting of the Merrimack Planning Board for Tuesday, February 6th, 2024. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, let's go through our usual housekeeping items. Remind everyone who's going to address the board to make sure the microphone is turned on and you speak clearly into it so the folks at home and the folks taking the minutes can hear. Our next planning board meeting after tonight is currently scheduled for February 20th, 2024 at 6:30 p.m. in the Matthew Thornton room, which is this room. Let's see, do we have, a need for alternates to be appointed? And
You got everybody.
yep, but I think Nelson's an alternate. Kevin, you're an alternate. And Maureen, are you still an alternate or are you a full member now?
No, alternate.
Okay, so that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Everybody's voting tonight, so that's 7. All alternates are into voting positions. Okay. Let's see. I think that's all the housekeeping items. The first other item on our agenda is our consent agenda. There are 4 items on it. What is the will of the board with respect to the consent agenda?
I move we approve as presented.
Second.
Motion is second. Nelson, were you making a motion or did you have a comment?
I had some questions on a couple of the things I'd like to ask.
Okay, if you're going to ask questions, they got to be removed from the consent agenda and then treated separately. So we can do that. Which ones do you have questions about?
Claim here, this page. Had to do with the extension of time. Regional impact, I had no problem.
For which one?
I had no problem with the regional impact.
Nelson, can you turn your mic on? I'm sorry.
Yeah, Nelson, your microphone's not turned on.
Oh, sorry. Thank you.
So there's 3 extension requests, Thomas More College, Anheuser-Busch, and Vault Motor Storage. Did you have questions about all 3 of those?
Oh, yeah, the question was on Vault Motor Storage.
Okay, so let's take that off of the consent agenda. Just that one?
That's the only one I had a question on.
Okay, so let's consider the consent agenda with A, B, and D. We've got a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstaining? Okay, that's the consent agenda to those items. What's your question on C, Vault?
Why do they need an extension?
They've actually got a plan to do an amendment that's related to something that they're trying to do, and so there's going to be a more formal presentation to us in a month or 2. So
Yeah.
that's what the extension's about. I think roughly. Casey, did I get that mostly right?
Yes, we're just waiting for them to make a very minor amendment onto their plan, but we caught word from the owner that they might come forward with a entire addition onto their property, so they might be back before the board.
So rather than taking things one at a time to kind of roll those things together. With that in mind, does that satisfy your question?
I guess.
If not, then say so.
Yeah.
Talk it through. More questions?
I don't have further question, I guess. Mr.
Or comment or no?
Well, I guess I'd like to know why they wanted the extension.
To coordinate with other material that they're going to present with us rather than to do things one at a time.
Have they applied for other?
They've had some discussions with staff about applying for some other things very soon.
And that's preventing them from finishing whatever is unfinished on
The 2 things are interrelated, and so their plan might change what they're required to finish here.
yeah.
I don't. You look at me like I'm talking in a different language, but that seems like a pretty common thing for us to address with.
Okay, I'll withdraw my objections and
I'm sorry, you don't.
yeah.
I didn't mean to be that direct with you. You don't have to withdraw an objection or not. We just have to treat it separately and now have a motion to either grant or deny the extension request.
Okay, make another motion then. Yeah.
Is there a motion to address the extension request for Vault?
I move we grant the extension.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Motion and a second to grant the request. Further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstaining? Okay, 700 for that. Okay. Yeah. I'm sorry if I'm making that. You're allowed to do that and just talk about things from the consent agenda. You just got to pull them off and do them separate.
Yeah, okay.
That's perfectly okay.
Well, that's what I wanted to do. I wanted some explanation. Because they've been around for a long time and I
Yes,
uh,
absolutely so.
got their CO and everything.
Fair enough. Okay, item 4 on the agenda, LMG Merrimack LLC is the applicant and owner. Continued review for acceptance and consideration of a 2-lot subdivision with 1 lot to contain an existing utility tower and associated building, and the other lot to contain a 100,115 square foot industrial building and its associated site improvements currently under construction. The parcel is located at 4 Harris Pond Drive in the I-1 Industrial and Aquifer Conservation Districts, Tax Map 1D, Lot 16, Case Planning Board 2024-1. This item is continued from the January 16, 2024 Planning Board meeting. Casey, is there anything that we need to know before we hear from an applicant?
Nope, nothing outside of what's in the staff memo. The applicant can do their presentation.
Okay. Please introduce yourself once you get settled in and then tell us about the project.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. For the record, my name is Ethan Beals. I'm a project manager at Hayner Swanson, doing business at 3 Congress Street in Nashua, New Hampshire. Here tonight representing LMG Merrimack LLC, seeking a subdivision approval for a 1 into 2 lot subdivision at 4 Harris Pond Drive. The subject site is known to the town of Merrimack Assessor's Office as Map D, Lot 1-6, and measures in total 13.03 acres in size and falls within Merrimack's I-1 Industrial Zone and Aquifer Conservation District. The site is abutted by undeveloped land owned by New Hampshire Department of Transportation, NHDOT, to the north, watershed property owned by Pennachuck Corp. To the west, the Pennachuck Waterworks Treatment and Operations Facility to the south, and Daniel Webster Highway to the east. When our client purchased the property, included with that is an existing cell tower, utility building, and associated site features in the southeast corner. I'll just point to the corner of the site, in the southeast corner of the subject property. As many of you may remember, back in December of 2022, a little over a year ago, our office appeared before this board seeking approval for the construction of the previously mentioned 100,000 plus or minus square foot light industrial / logistics building, and that project is well under construction at this time. It's proposed to subdivide lot 1-6 into 2 lots. First, the new lot 16 will contain the industrial building that is currently under construction and will measure 12.91 acres in size. And then the new proposed lot 1-7 will contain the existing cell tower, utility building, and associated features, and will measure 0.124 acres in size. As noted in the staff report, there's not a frontage requirement in the I-1 zone. However, as part of this subdivision plan, the existing access and utility easements to the cell tower lot will be revised so that appropriate access can be maintained and provided to that new lot. In summary, we believe that the application is complete and conforms with the town of Merrimack subdivision plan regulations. I've reviewed the staff report, and all the conditions are agreeable to us as conditions of approval here tonight. I'd be happy to answer any questions that the board may have.
Can you show me on your plan exactly where the new lot is and where it's coming from and all the
Yeah.
details of what you're doing?
So it's very small. So the whole lot is this main entire piece right over to here. And then literally in the southeast corner, there's a little just tiny piece with a cell tower, an associated building, and a couple small site features. So the proposal is to subdivide off a very small lot right in that southeast corner. That will literally is the only purpose I'll refer to it as a utility lot. It is specifically for that cell tower and the associated features with that cell tower.
So help me find the new lot line for that subdivided lot on the plan.
So one of the conditions, as you may have seen in the staff report, is to separate it out into two different ones. It is a little bit hard to see on the bigger one, on the zoomed out one.
Okay.
Bob, I think on the top left there is the entire project.
Correct.
And was confusing me when I was looking at this. This bottom right
Is a
is a zoomed in piece of just that little bottom corner.
Correct.
Does that help?
It does, but I'm still
So-
looking for where the line is.
The lot line would be the more bold line if I'm looking at the zoomed in with the bearings and distances. Really, it's a almost an exact square
Okay, I got you.
around that piece.
Yeah, your two pieces just confused the
Yep.
daylights out of me.
Yep, absolutely, and that was one of the conditions that staff had requested for us to separate it out and put
Yep.
the overall property in one sheet and then the cutout on a second sheet, and that's perfectly
But you didn't.
perfect.
So you confused me.
We're happy to do so.
I'm a
Apologies
girl.
for
I'm
not
easily
doing it ahead
confused.
of time.
Oh my, don't say that. Okay, so I understand it now. So the lot's just barely big enough to support the building, and it's completely contained on all sides by the bigger lot.
Correct.
Okay. Board members, do you have any questions about what's proposed? Nelson?
Get my light on. One question, are there any guy wires on the cell tower?
I do not believe so. No, if you were to drive by it, it is very prominent. If you're driving up Daniel Webster Highway, it's very clearly visible. It's a large cell tower, but there are not any guy wires or any
No.
other support
Okay.
wires that extend down at various angles. Correct.
I didn't see any, but I wanted to be sure. that
Correct.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. Anything else?
That's all.
No. Kevin?
There's an existing access easement, and that is going to remain in place and provide access to it?
Correct. So in kind of a little bit of both. There is an existing access easement as part of the new lot. We're going to revise that slightly so that it makes sense and works in conjunction with the new lot. But the ultimate goal is to continue to be in roughly the same location, continue to maintain that access easement over what will be the new lot 1-6.
Is that one of our conditions of approval to have our town's legal counsel look at your easement documents and all of that when they're drafted? I didn't hear.
I believe that is correct.
Yes, that is a recommended condition.
Okay.
One more for you, sir. On the on your blow up on the expanded version of it, it shows the access easement, I believe, up and to the right, and then it looks like it stops on the north side of that access easement.
So-
is that so that it has access directly out to the road, or what is? I don't understand why that
No.
stops and doesn't carry in like the existing one.
So the shaded one
Yep.
is the new one, if you will. Just to the north of that, there's actually a separate access easement, and that one is unchanged, and that one will remain in place. So if you, it's
I
hard
got
to
it. I
see,
see it
but
now.
there's an
It ties into the
existing
existing.
one, exactly. It ties into a separate existing access easement. There is a little bit of a gravel road that runs down the front, along the frontage, along Daniel Webster Highway, well, not along Daniel Webster Highway, but in parallel with Daniel Webster Highway on the overall lot, and that basically is the front, is the access, and that will continue to be maintained that way for the cell tower company to maintain access to that lot.
Okay, thank you.
Other comments or questions? Barbara?
So you'll have to help me refresh my memory because for some reason I'm drawing a blank on this project. So you're just cutting off the cell tower and the space for the backup building, for the restore building. Where's your curb cut for the warehouse?
So the access to the overall property is actually off Harris Pond Drive.
Okay,
And so it's really there, when the original Harris Pond overall development was constructed, this subject lot, a little bit maybe of a reminder from a year ago, that was deemed as a future developable lot, and there was a driveway that was specifically cited there, but it is just inside. If you were to turn off Daniel Webster Highway, there is a little bit of a bifurcation in this piece. And then the access to the overall lot would be right inside Fort Harris.
So the remaining lot is going to be totally dedicated to the warehouse and the parking.
Correct. Essentially, how this subdivision came to be, when my client purchased the overall property, came with it, a cell tower with a lease, and as part of his negotiations to kind of continue to maintain the lease with the cell company, maybe not a request, but it was a lot cleaner if instead of a lease, it just became, let's sell the property to the cell company, and they own that property separately from us owning our property with the industrial building. We'll continue to provide them access easements over our property.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, other comments or questions? Good.
And neither of these properties are part of the condominium association.
Correct.
Okay, board members, the first item of business for us is the determination of completeness. Is there a
I move it's complete.
motion to find the application complete and subject to our jurisdiction? Who seconds? One of you, Jamie or Nelson, count them both. Discussion on completeness, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstaining? 700 to find the application complete. There are no waivers requested. Is there any other further questions from the applicant before we open up for a public hearing? Seeing none, are there any abutters or interested citizens who wish to weigh in? Please come forward, sir. You can use either one, microphone there or the one up here at the table, whatever you like. Just introduce yourself and then tell us what's on your mind.
My name is Bill Fallon. I live on Merrimack Drive. I've been there 28 years, kind of a newcomer. But before the cell tower was built, they built it, and then the access road was off of Harris Pond Drive. But then, years later, when Pennachuck built their warehouse, they built the street to the warehouse, and then right before the gate to the warehouse, they built a curb cut and paved about 20 feet a driveway up to the cell tower. And that that would be a lot better easement to them and a lot closer than going, off of Harris Pond Drive.
Okay.
I don't know if there was a reason for that, why Pennachuck built the, started the driveway to them, and then, and they're not using that, they're using the longer one.
Yep. We can certainly have the applicant address that when their turn comes to answer responses, but I suspect it's because the applicant owns both parcels and would use it, access it using his own property rather than somebody else's. But I'll let the applicant address that when their turn comes again. Thank you.
Okay.
Anything else that you'd like to offer?
No.
Okay. Are there any other abutters or citizens who wish to weigh in? Okay, then we'll close the public hearing. I don't know if you care to respond to that or any of the other comments or questions from the board, but please do if you'd like to.
I think, Mr. Chairman, you said it well. Of course, we represent the owner of Lot 1-6, and trying to go get an easement from Pennachuck is a whole separate piece compared to when you're granting it essentially to yourself as part of selling off the lot. Also, I don't know that I'm familiar with the previously mentioned little section of paved from the Pennachuck piece. I do know if you look at that Pennachuck driveway up to the cell tower, there is a fair amount of topography as the land rises up to our subject property that I think would be non-conducive really to a driveway. My understanding is that the cell tower company and their utility company that maintains that has, at least in my understanding, always used the gravel road across the front of our subject property.
Do you have any sense of how frequently the cell tower requires anybody to visit it?
I don't have a good sense. I believe it to be quite infrequently, or at least very infrequently, that it's actually an intensive user. Occasionally, I've driven by and seen a truck going down that road. I believe they perform just different checks from time to time, but I believe it's very not intensive either way.
I have no idea either. I don't know if it's something that happens every day or every few days or once or twice a month or
I
once
think
or twice a year.
I think it's more in the latter options there. I don't believe it to be once a day or even once a week.
Okay. Certainly at those frequencies, even once a day or once a week, but certainly if it's once every couple of weeks or a couple of times a year, which driveway you use probably means nothing to nobody. So in terms of impacts or traffics.
Yeah, I think we're, as a 100,000 square foot industrial or logistics building, I think that site driveway and the access into the overall property has certainly been sized to handle a lot more than a couple trips, even at worst case, a couple trips a week. So.
Other comments or questions by members of the board? If not, it's appropriate for the board to consider whether it wishes to take any final action on this proposal. Lynn?
I'll move that the board make a finding that with the proposed conditions of approval, the application meets all applicable regulatory requirements necessary, and further to grant conditional final approval to the application subject to the recommended conditions of approval presented in the staff memo dated January 12th, 2024.
So a motion and a second to grant conditional final approval, subject to the staff memo. If there's no further discussion, then all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstaining? 700.
Thank you for your time tonight.
Thank you. Thank you for your presentation. You're all set. Okay. Back to the agenda. Number 3 on the agenda is Keith Curran as the applicant and Gleason Company LLC as the owners. It's continued review for acceptance and final approval for acceptance and consideration of final approval of a site plan to construct a 7,650 square foot manufacturing building with associated office space and other associated site improvements. The parcel is located at 63 Turbine Way in the I-1 Industrial, Aquifer Conservation, Elderly Housing Overlay, and Town Center Overlay Districts. Tax map 5D1, lot 51, case planning board 2024-2. And it's continued from our January 16th, 2024 planning board meeting. Casey, is there anything that we need to know before we hear from the applicant? Or is this?
Yeah, so this
to
application.
continue.
Yeah, so this is a continuance request. They have requested to be continued to our February 20th planning board meeting.
Excellent. And so the applicant isn't here to address that, but they've asked for a continuance. What's the will of the board?
I move we continue this application to the February 20th, 24 meeting with no further
Notice
notice
others.
to abutters.
Excellent. Motion and a second to continue to February 20th. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstaining? Okay, that's all set. Item 4 on our agenda is the John Flatley Company as the applicant and owner. Continued consideration of an amendment of a previously approved site plan to modify the project's phasing to allow up to a maximum of 3 units in the first building out of 3 total proposed buildings to be occupied prior to the completion of any off-site improvements. The parcel is located at 685 Daniel Webster Highway in the I-1 Industrial and Aquifer Conservation Districts and the Wellhead Protection Area. Tax map 6E, lot 3-4, case planning board 2024-3. The item is continued from the January 16th, 2024 planning board meeting. Casey, is there anything that we need to know before we hear from the applicant?
Nope, I have no comments at this time.
Okay, I'll offer one comment before we begin. It has in the past been my practice to recuse myself from consideration of applications involving this property. However, taking a look back at the source of that conflict, it is long ago aged out and dissipated, and so that conflict doesn't exist anymore. And so I will sit in on this matter. With that, please introduce yourself and tell us what you got proposed.
Great. My name is Kevin Walker. I'm with the John Flatley Company. I'm with Derek Roach from Vanass and Associates. They did our traffic work out here. Basically, we're just looking to change the phasing on this a bit. What we have currently is we have one user for 2 units in the southerly building, which is Building A. So we asked for NAS to put together a memo of how many units could be occupied before having to do the improvements on DW Highway. And it comes out to about 11,000 square feet, which is between 2 and 3 units. So we can get 2 units in building A, which is the one that's obviously constructed at this point. The proposed user is going to occupy both of the 2 northerly units of building A. It's going to be probably 1 full unit of just storage, so it's not really going to be occupied by employees. But for the sake of what we have going on, those would be the 2 units that are occupied at this point. So we'd just like to revise the phasing to include those 2 units as really the initial phase, which will allow us to get in there, make the improvements as necessary, and hopefully have them in there by April 1st. There are a couple recommendations by your planning department. One regards note 3 on the phasing notes to indicate more specifically that building A in the parking and loading areas and drainage will be completed during phase 1. So we will switch that note specifying building A. The drainage is already complete. Everything is paved and in good shape out there. And the second recommendation was for note 5. It said between 2 and 3 units. We can't really occupy between 2 and 3 units, so we agree with the planning department's recommendation to change that note to 2 units, which again will be the 2 northerly units of building A. And that's really the long and short of it. If you have any questions for either me or Derek about the traffic, feel free to ask. We'll be happy to answer.
Excellent. Thank you, Kevin. What's the current plan for doing the offsite improvements?
As soon as spring hits.
So spring.
As soon as they let us get going out there. We actually requested back in November to do some out of season work out there, and they kind of laughed.
The DOT or
Yeah.
Yeah.
the asphalt
So we were trying to just get it done and get it over with that, and then the snow hit, so it kind of made sense all over. So
What are your offsite improvements entail?
we're going to be making a right turn lane heading north into the site, and also a left turn lane into the site heading south.
Does that require widening the road or just restriping?
Will be both.
Okay. How much wider does the pavement have to be?
What's 14 feet or something?
Yeah, something like that. I don't have the exact numbers in front of me.
Yeah, roughly. I'm not
But
pinning you down to it. I just want to understand the
It's
scope.
between 14 and 20 feet.
Okay. And for what length of the roadway does it have to get widened?
It's a couple hundred feet to each side of the intersection.
North and south both.
Have you guys lined up contractors to do that work already?
Yes.
Okay,
Yep.
so they're already on board with doing it. It's just a matter of weather.
Just a matter of time. Yeah, if we can get the weather to break a little sooner, we'll put another request in the DOT to maybe start a little earlier.
It certainly seems to me, since you've got a building with 10 units in it and you're going to be able to occupy 2, the pressure is on you to get those improvements done so you could occupy the other 8 units. They're sitting there waiting for, somebody
Right,
to be
yeah.
in there. So,
I mean, it's going to take us a couple months to do the improvements to get this occupant in, which will give us enough time to get that work done, right around when they'll be moving in. So,
okay. Board members, do you have any questions or discussion with the applicant? Nelson?
Yes, I got a couple questions. What's the current status of the St. Cobain building? Is that occupied? Is that,
yeah,
Can
it's occupied. I've actually been speaking with a couple of people over there, regarding what they're doing and maybe trying to get some easements switched up on the back side of the building. A lot of the folks have been relocated from there, but my understanding is they're not planning a full shutdown until towards the end of this year. Is the last I heard.
but it's tapering down?
Tapering
But-
down. That's my understanding. Is there were a lot of
I think
people
that-
relocated at the end of 2023.
I don't know if it was just rumor, but it seems like I heard some discussion about who the next occupant of the building would be, or that there was somehow that was known or discussion. Is anybody aware of that?
I've heard nothing, and speaking with them, I mean, they don't have to tell me what's going on. But
Yeah, they don't have to tell
they
us
didn't-
either,
they
and I know
didn't,
you're not them, and so we're
Yeah.
asking you questions just to see what you know. but
yeah, no,
obviously
my understanding is they're just trying to get it shut down, and that's it. That's it. Whether there's other plans, I'm not sure.
Other questions, Nelson?
Yeah, are you gonna be able to do any landscaping? Right now, the area is kind of devoid of landscape. And, I guess
Well-
we're only talking a short time here.
Through the entirety of that site, which is 3 buildings, there'll definitely be more landscaping as we go. But if you remember, we had to cut some trees down that had some disease in them, and it kind of took away those trees that were right on DW Highway. And we actually came back to you folks and came back with a planting plan that had. I mean, we knocked down maybe 12 trees, and now we have 60 trees out there. So there's quite a bit of trees out there in front of Building A, which is the building we're
They're
talking
not
about
there
now.
now, though, are they?
Yeah, they are.
Oh yeah, they're all out
Landscaping
there.
in front of the first building is actually pretty nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, the
Well,
first
I think it
the
is.
first building
Very
is
nice.
is fully landscaped with all the new plantings.
Building A is
That's the
finished.
one top. That's the one to the south. That's the one
Yeah.
we're talking about now.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay,
I mean, I
I
don't think the intention is to make it look like it did before.
there's
Go ahead.
there's a
Nelson.
lot of the space there that's not landscaped.
Yeah, certainly everything
Yeah.
to the north of the building is, constructed.
Yeah, there's still quite a bit to go,
Yeah.
over the course of the whole site. And, those trees are young. Obviously, there's no leaves on some of those trees now. Some of them are pines, some of them aren't. Ones that aren't, just like every other tree now, just kind of a bunch of branches sitting there. So, and obviously, we'll have our landscaper keeping an eye on those and making sure, if they're surviving and thriving, great. If not, then we replace them as we typically would.
Okay, we'll be back. You'll be back to us, I'm sure, yeah. And one other side question is, Vanessa Associates the same as VHB?
The Vanasse is the same, but that's about it. Robert Vanasse was the founder of both companies, but
Yeah.
he's no longer with our company either. He's on to a third company. of
But
his
they
own.
are separate, they are separate companies.
They are separate companies, yes.
Thank you, that was side
Yeah, that was the key
information.
question. I know, Barbara, you had a question. I also well, you go first.
So I know in your notes it says that the applicants intend to access the site from the existing driveway for lot 6, what is it, 3-2? Which one is that? Because you got to get them in there somehow. And you said that you're not doing the DW changes that DOT suggested until after the occupant
Right. So
moves in,
So the reason we're asking for this phasing is because we can do so if we do 2 units and occupy 2 units, that widening wouldn't be required. So in other words, if we put in a building and we're only putting in a 2-unit building and we're only occupying 2 units, we wouldn't have to do any DW widening.
But at some point, you're going to have to if you
We are.
go
So it's-
after the
so we are not
remaining
gonna be able-
units.
We're not going to be able to get another occupancy permit for that building until we widen DW Highway.
Yeah, so they're talking about doing that in the spring in a couple of months.
So can I ask a question to Casey? We're allowed to give an occupancy permit even though the building is not complete and the cut and the highway changes haven't been made yet? Because the occupancy permit is for the entire building, isn't it?
It depends on the original approval. So in this scenario, we have a phasing plan that you approved
Okay, so
previously.
it falls into the phasing.
Yep, it's all about the phasing.
But this is a different phasing.
Right, so whatever we phase is what they can get COs for. If it's 1 unit at a time or 2 units, then that's what they can get. What's the status of your site lighting? I heard complaints and your lighting is not what it's supposed
So
to be in
I've
terms of.
talked to the planning department about this a few times. The complaint originally, from what I understand, was the wall lighting at the front of the building. We had a certain fixture on there, and we found a fixture that looked a little bit better. It's the same, voltage, amperage, whatever, watts, however you want to put it. But the top is not covered. So just a little bit of light comes out the top against the building, a little bit of light comes out the bottom against the building. And apparently that was initially what I understood was the complaint. So we're going to cap those lights. We're going to cap the tops of those lights. So basically the same as what was proposed. And I spoke with Robert about that this morning, actually, and said, we'll cap that. Do we need to go actually back to you folks for that, or is it departmental? He said, no, we'll do it departmentally.
Departmental is fine as long as the lights become compliant with what our regulations are, which is
Right.
downcast lighting, not dark sky friendly.
Yeah.
But there's also on the south face of the building, which is not facing the road, there's some lighting that is casting horizontally and quite bright.
So those lights are exactly what was proposed. Everything else on there, except for those ones out front, the ones on the side and the tall lights in the parking lot, are the same exact ones that were proposed.
Okay.
Now we can look at the ones on the side and maybe try to find a way to angle them a little different, or maybe add another shade to it. But those are what were proposed
You
and
have
shown on the
comment
lighting
same thing,
plan.
or- Go ahead.
I drove by a number of, probably a month or more ago.
Yeah.
And as I drove north on DW, the lights on the end of the building were bright.
Okay.
I drove past a couple of weeks ago and it looked like they had been turned off, which as far as I'm concerned is preferable. The lights on the end obviously are not facing Webster Green, but
Yeah.
they still provide a lot of light. So if those are kept off, I have no problem. I didn't think the lighting on the front of the building was that bad. I do have another question. At one point, you were lighting the blank sign in the median at the entrance,
Yeah.
and I would like to make sure that that is not lighted until you actually have occupancy, because otherwise you're lighting a bright white sign that just reflects. There is one light on a pole there that is up top and it's down shaded, and I have no problem with that particular one, but I don't want to see that entrance sign marquee lit unless you have occupancy.
Be coming pretty soon in a couple months. So.
Yeah, well,
As far as the wall packs on that south face, though, what was approved, and I mean, I don't have the plan in front of me to go back and review what was there, but our requirement would have been downcast, night sky friendly,
Yeah, I'm going to take
cut
another
off.
look at it. I didn't notice the ones on the side. I was paying attention to the ones on the front and the parking lot lights.
the ones on the end, when I drove by, when they were on, they were bright,
Okay,
and I don't like that.
right. We'll fix it.
I think I understand from the department, from Robert and his team, that they're going to require that those lights be compliant with the plan in order to sign off on the CO, even for the 2 units. So you're gonna have to take care of that right away anyway.
Right.
For both of them, both the side and the front, whatever needs there are. With that, I just wanted to make sure, because obviously lighting is one of the ways that your site can impact the neighbors more than anything
Right.
else.
Understood.
So, other comments or questions?
So if I understood correctly, the two that are occupying right now or going to be occupying are just storage?
One of them is basically going to be storage. It's going to be about the size of one of the units. It'll just be like a back room with material back there. And then there'll be a few people up front. My understanding is there might be 3 to 5 employees
Is that for both or just for one?
total.
For both of them?
Yes, total for both.
Okay. I'm only asking because it's not like turning into a storage unit or anything like that. Is it?
No, it's. I think when you go to a shoe store, they got some shoes out, and it's like, oh, I need this size, and they go in the back room, and they got a boatload of shoes in the back, and they pull out whatever size. And here
Okay.
you go. It's one of those things.
Okay. And the only reason why I'm asking is because there were proposed 3 buildings, right? A, B, and C.
Right.
And one of those buildings turned into just storage, right?
No.
I thought that was what that was asked. No? One of those buildings aren't going to turn into just storage?
No.
Okay.
No. We came quite a while back.
The part north of it, right?
Not A, B, or C.
It's not A, B, or
Yeah,
C?
yeah, we did come
So
in on
the
the
A,
master
B, C,
plan.
D?
No. This is a site plan all by itself, building A, B, and C. The one you're thinking about that we never ended up getting that signed off because
Okay.
now it's just allowed. But
All right.
it's to the north side of the
Yes.
Sanko Band driveway,
Okay.
where this is on the south side of the Sanko Band
All on
driveway.
the south side. Perfect. Thank you.
I don't remember that one for many years,
Yep.
the one to the north of the driveway, but it was just a warehouse. It wasn't,
Yeah.
wasn't storage, like self-storage or something like
No,
that. It was a warehouse.
No, we proposed self-storage.
Oh, was it?
It was originally retail. It's just a small retail pod.
Yeah.
We switched that to self-storage.
Thought it was a little high base storage, but a warehouse type. But
Oh, we've
either
got
way,
one of those too. That's a bigger, 120,000 square feet further to the east
Further
towards the tracks.
Understood. See what happens when you recuse yourself? You have no idea what's going on with the project. Well, you know, it's big site. They all are moving targets. Okay. Further discussion? Let me invite any butters or citizens who wish to weigh in on the proposal. Are there any others? Whoever wants to come first. You want to sit at the table or do you want to stand at the microphone? Microphone, then I guess it's save these guys the trouble. Introduce yourself when you get ready and then tell us what's on your mind.
Okay, my name is Kendall Smith. I'm at 18 Kimberly Drive, and I'm asking that you don't approve this amendment. Now, what we just heard now was a change from what was originally in the request. So, as I understand it, the note 5 on the phasing plan is now going to read 2 units instead of 3 units to be occupied, if that's
That's my
correct.
understanding as well.
Yes.
So one of the questions I have under that note, it says the remainder of the building will be occupied with the substantial completion of the off-site improvements. Now, you heard what the off-site improvements were that had to be submitted to the DOT for their driveway permit, milling, widening of the northbound lane, paving, repaving all that area, doing pavement markings to make the travel lanes and the turning lanes, and then putting up signage. So my question is, how much of that has to be done to be substantially complete? Seems to me all of it needs to be done. So
Substantially complete is just kind of an industry term that's used in construction sort of universally, and I don't know that it has a definition that I'm aware of, but it basically means that, you know, if there's a little something here or there on the side or a tree that needs replanting or something like that, that doesn't stop you from being substantially complete. But functionally, all of the improvements have to be there. So he wouldn't be able to do one lane or the north but not the south and say, oh, well, that's 51%, I'm substantially complete.
So why
It's not
doesn't
like
he,
that.
I'm sorry. So why doesn't you say complete, since it sounds like the town is only going to accept that all of that work gets done?
It's that's the
what's
standard
point
term
of-
that's used in any of the town approvals or any construction approvals all over the place. It's probably the DOT's term, frankly, the state's DOT.
So the original cover letter that was sent, the reason for requesting this was the permitting process and seasonal conditions have delayed the off-site construction. Seasonal conditions I don't understand. I mean, anybody who works construction in this area deals with seasonal conditions all the time and plans for seasonal conditions. It's not a surprise when winter comes. And I don't know what the permitting process, what delays in the permitting process has to do, or how that affected the delay in the off-site construction. I don't think my big concern is the traffic analysis, and maybe it's a little abated now that they've gone down to 2, using just 2 pods. But my concern is that they used a general light industrial area to calculate the estimated trips. And the trips are actually truck trips. If you look at the Luck Code 110, it's for truck trips, which is why it's my understanding, it's why when you look at their calculations, there's very few trips. I think there's 2 trips on a Saturday. So I'm concerned that does not capture what actually can go in there. What actually can go in there is anything that's in industrial I-1 district, industrial district I-1, which is a lot more than just general light industrial. So I don't think that analysis really flies with what the potential is for that. I would like to know what sort of businesses are going in there. And I attended the last August, I attended the zoning board meeting where Mr. Walker was asking for a variance when it came to locating his sign. And the zoning board was asking what kind of businesses he had planned on going in there. Because they were thinking it was just going to be industrial, and his response was that, it's not going to be just industrial. So I fired up the meeting on YouTube and used their transcript function. And back then he said that, I'm quoting now, there are various uses that customers will come into the site. This isn't strictly an industrial use. This is a flexible use. This is why we call it a flex site, and that's what's allowed here. There may be some retail use here. Depends on who comes in and signs a lease, and that signing the lease to me is important. And then he talked about flex sites and how they're used. And then he said, and I'm quoting again, we've got somebody that I can't get into much detail about that is thinking of doing something that has a restaurant portion and a game option. Think of indoor sport type thing that we are speaking with that will obviously have cars and customers and people coming in off the street with their kids and that type of thing. So there's multiple, again, that's why we call it a flex site. This isn't designed to be 100% industrial. It's not designed to be 100% retail. So it kind of seems to me that you can, on one hand, say the universe of businesses that can go in there are industrial or retail, but then treat it as 100% retail when you're trying to calculate trips. That to me doesn't really work. And the last thing I would comment on is that regardless of what we hear today, if we allow this amendment, he can put anything in there that is compliant with the industrial I-1. And it sounds like he thinks he's got somebody sign up. Deals fall through all the time. So let's say this deal falls through for whatever reason, he can put anybody in there that will sign a lease, and that's what his criteria was. And there will be no turning lanes. And I'm obviously from someone who lives at Webster Green. That turning lane is very important, especially when you consider that stretch of road very often is level of service F. You can imagine what it's like when you're adding more traffic, trying to do a southbound traffic, trying to turn onto his site. It seems to me that this is not, when he got the driveway permit, he was on that permit, he was not allowed to work between 15th of November through the 15th of April. Well, the 15th of April is 2 months away. It doesn't seem to be particularly onerous to have him wait and do that work, especially given that he was approved to do the work. The cover letter that went with his approval was dated the 28th of June 2022. So it's almost, he's had a year and a half to do the work. I don't understand, why he needs this special dispensation when he could have done the work anytime after the 28th of June of 2022. And for those reasons, I ask that you do not approve this amendment. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Are there any other abutters or citizens who wish to weigh in?
Katie Poirier, 11 Kimberly Drive.
Katie?
So first of all, I want to just start off by saying, if you do approve this, based off of what is written on this notice, it does say for the maximum of 3 buildings. I understand they're talking about just 2. I just would really like for you to emphasize that only 2 are allowed at this time. Specifically, if you look at your packet on page 2, the last sentences, it says, if the southern or middle building are built first, one could build and occupy only 2 units before they need improvements on Route 3. So just to clarify that, that's on your, on page 2 in the bottom section.
Got it.
Okay, thank you. Wanted to highlight that. Apologize for coming in late, so I'm gonna be a little off on what I say.
Take your time. You got all the time in the world to go through it. at your
No, I
pace.
know, but I didn't hear everything, so.
Oh, understood.
This, to the best of my knowledge, the way that the phasing was originally approved, it was per building, not per unit in a building. So I think that should have some clarity in that. This would actually be the first in a really long time that we're allowing a developer to occupy 2 units in one building. And what is that going to say to other developers when they do CUPs and they want to occupy just 1 or 2 units and not the whole building? I did hear the whole tree and landscaping, and I completely disagree. Specifically, Lynn, you asked for him to put more trees on the southern part of that southern building. That is definitely not done. In addition to the trees that have been planted, they're not even close to 5 feet. And the lighting is atrocious. I have pictures if you want. So that definitely should be taken into account. Let me see. So again, with the with the road, and the construction needing to be done, just echoing off of what he said, he had over a year to do this. And with the highway expansion, there is an abundance of people getting off of toll jumpers, if you want to call it, getting off of 12, getting off of 13, so they don't deal with that construction. The safety of our children, because our school bus is right there where they want to put, where they have their entrance. So not having those lanes already, I mean, I don't know the statistics, but I'm pretty sure that once a week I see on Facebook that on DW Highway, we have people passing cars on for school buses. So that's a real big concern, that these lanes need to be lined up and signage needs to be there so our children or our school buses don't get hit. I don't know about this whole 1 or 2 cars coming out of their unit. That's because nobody was there. So when I have had to leave my house and there's a construction truck, they think they're bigger and badder than us, and I feel like I'm playing Russian roulette. They just gun it. And it's hard enough to take a left-hand turn to go north. But they're going south, and that's not, and all they're doing is gunning it to get into traffic again, going south. So I think those signs and the lining all need to be done before this occupancy, because it's a safety hazard. We need to protect our, our residents of this town. We're all taxpayers, and these people are not. They're just, yes, they flatly is, and yes, I guess eventually their leaseholders are, but they're not. I mean, one fatality is too much, in my opinion. So I guess I just don't think that there's enough safety to allow just two buildings. So, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Poirier. Are there other abutters or citizens who wish to weigh in? Okay, if there are none, then I'll close the public hearing. And I have a couple of questions, but I first want to open the floor, let you guys respond to any of the public comments you hear, and then I'm sure there'll be some dialogue from the board members. Is there anything that you'd like to respond to specifically?
Specifically, I will respond to the comment on the ITE 110, Land Use Code 110. That is not just for trucks. That gets all vehicles in the land use code. There is a subset land use code of 1U10, like there are for many of the land use codes, that does just trucks. Typically, they're 10 to 20% of the overall trips, but the vehicles displayed or the vehicle trips listed in the memo are for all vehicles to the site, not just trucks.
Okay. Anything else that you want to respond to?
Yeah, just a couple things. Yes, we did get the permit from DOT for this back in 2022. Our hope was to have all of our DOT permits in hand and do all the work we needed to on DW at one time. Have 2-3 days, 4 days of chaos out there, getting those lanes in and, getting everything squared away to have everything done at once instead of spreading it out. So the reason that wasn't done back in 2022 was we've been waiting for permits, and we're still waiting for a permit. It's taking a lot longer than I had hoped, but we're at the point now that we're gonna do this first, and we're gonna work our way through each permit as we get them. We've waited too long at this point to do the improvements that are required here. I guess just to touch on a couple other items. I don't know what to tell anybody about the toll jumpers. I get it. I understand why people do it, but we have no control of that. It would be nice if we did, but we don't. The reason that we don't believe this is a safety hazard or that type of issue, obviously, is because we've come in specifically looking at 2 units. If Vanass came to me and Derek said, "Hey, guess what? You can't do any units out here. You need these lanes immediately." Well, I wouldn't be here. If it said 1 unit and this guy wanted 2, I'd tell him you can only get 1 unit, and we'd come and ask him for 1. But it's between 2 and 3 units. They need 2, even though one of them is going to be completely unoccupied. It's just going to be storage. But it is what it is, as far as that goes. Again, as far as the lighting, we discussed it. I'll take another look at the lighting, especially the stuff on the south side. All of the landscaping is complete out there, and I believe planning department has already gone out there and looked at that and okayed everything. So everything that was required to be planted, including the extra plantings that Ms. Christensen requested during that hearing process, is in the ground. And like I said, we'll have our arborists go out there, and if anything's in tough shape or doesn't look like it's going to survive, we'll pull it and replace it like we do on every project for any plantings that don't make it. And I think that pretty much addresses the majority of what was said.
Thank you, Kevin. I have a question about traffic. Is it Derek?
Yes.
Derek, thank you. One of the abutters had talked about how the section of Daniel Webster Highway functions at a level of service F at times. Can you speak to that? Is that your understanding as well? And what does that mean in terms of the function? I certainly understand level of service very well when it comes to intersections, but on an open section of highway without any signals.
Right. We didn't run that analysis, so typically that's done on freeways. There's not really a methodology for running section analysis on highways like this versus it's more for interstates. The methodology that's developed in that way. So typically, what we do is we do, as you said, intersection analyses. So the intersection analysis shows that the main line runs pretty well out there. I don't have those numbers in front of me. But that there is a high volume on that street. The side streets do see delay. So again, there are simulation models that you can do that would take into effect the queuing and all that other stuff. That's not the typical standard analysis. It's not what's required by your DOT or for the analysis for this. So we don't have that analysis to tell you. So I can't say that the level of service isn't an F on the main line. I can tell you that.
What does level of service F look like if either on a freeway or?
So in an intersection, the way that's defined is on a typical cycle, right? You have a queue that's there, and that queue is able to go through the signal during its green phase, and then there's no more queue. A failing signal would be only part of that queue gets through, some of it gets stuck, and then the next amount comes, and then that queue continues to extend and continues to extend and continues to extend.
Okay, so the Bedford Road light by Walgreens functions that way a lot in the late afternoon. And it extends well past your site with the traffic that's backed up to get to that light. I don't know how many cycles it takes, but several to get through that light. So, but that's the light. That's not the main line of the roadway. And frankly, that's a man-caused problem because the DOT won't fix its lights.
Correct. That's a regional issue with that signal, with all the traffic coming off of what is it, Route 6 highway there? What's the other highway?
Everett Turnpike or
Everett Turnpike. Thank you. Yes. So there's a lot of traffic coming out of there, and it's a DOT, like you said, a DOT location. They need to come up with some sort of large scale improvements there to solve that type of issue.
I've actually spoken. I've been out to the site plenty of times, especially in the afternoon. I know the traffic, how it gets out there. 5, 6 o'clock. Sometimes a little earlier, sometimes a little later. And I spoke with DOT and I said, "What are you going to do to fix this? What needs to happen?" And he said, what basically they would have to do is do land takings from either our site or maybe even further north, all the way down to the traffic light at Bedford Street. And they're just not there at the point of acting on that. Now, what you'd end up with is, my guess, not being the traffic engineer like this guy, is you get to Bedford Street, you got a right-hand turn only lane, and maybe you go 2 straight throughs, and then it pairs down to 1 lane once you get through that light heading south. Again, I'm just spitballing a little bit, but they would need to take a portion of land from all of the landowners.
Certainly that would be the case if they're trying to widen DW Highway.
Right.
And I don't know that is the best solution to that problem. I mean, all you have to do is stand on that corner and realize that the light timing is terrible.
That too.
It's just, it literally is terrible. There's way too much priority given to Bedford Road. There's hardly ever any traffic backed up that way, but there's 2 miles of it on DW Highway. And that's not your fault. I know you don't control that light or any of those kinds of things, but in terms of, except for the traffic that's caused by that light though, What do we know about the way that DW Highway functions past this site, past Gilbert Crossing, past all these other areas that you guys have studied over the time?
Heading north or heading south? Heading
Start
north,
with
heading
one
north
and
is
do-
typically fine.
At least in that section, it does seem to be okay going
Yeah.
north in the morning at least.
Yeah, it's really the biggest issue, and correct me if anyone sees different, including the folks in behind me. It seems like the biggest issue is the afternoon peak hour heading south on DW.
I don't.
And I
don't
would
go
say
through there
it's because
traffic
there's
here.
no exit 12 coming south. Yeah, I mean, that's basically what it is. You have northbound there, but you don't have southbound. So there's, everybody gets off at 13, that's trying to get over to that way,
Yeah, if you're trying to get to the northern part of Merrimack, you have to get off at 13 and come down DW Highway,
right?
or else go all the way down
Go
to
down
11.
to 11
come
and then
north.
head back up, right?
And that's obviously nuts. So.
If I could just make a comment.
Sure, why not?
Sorry, I'm just, about the traffic.
Can you go ahead the microphone so the folks at home can hear you?
So if you're leaving our area, Webster Green, at 7 a.m. going north, it's really difficult to get out. So it is not just afternoon. It is also in the mornings.
Understood. I do drive by there at about that time in the morning, and there is a lot of traffic on DW Highway, which you'd have to turn into it, and that's keeping you from being able to do it. It doesn't back up and function like the southbound does at the light, where you just stop and go bumper to bumper, check your phone, but don't let the cops see you. So. Sir, you want to weigh in too? Microphone. Yeah, no. I'm being flexible.
Relative to the signal at Bedford Road there, I spoke with the previous DPW director, and for the life of me, I can't remember his name, big fellow.
Kyle Fox.
Kyle, there you go. And he told me that the town has control over the timing of that signal, and that his preference is not to change it. He does not want to dump a ton of traffic onto Bedford Road. So it's not necessarily the state's problem. I think it's the town's problem. So
Okay.
I just wanted to point that out as well.
Thank you for the comment. I know Kyle's not here anymore, but I do serve on some boards with him, so I could ask about that. But even whatever his answer is, doesn't matter anymore because he's not the DPW guy.
I will state, made me think of it. I would assume if DOT is the one in control, which is what I think, but they have priority to not wanting stuff to back out onto Everett Turnpike. So that's probably why they give such high priority to Bedford Road.
I think that's true. Bedford
Clearly,
Road is
they have it not balanced properly, but that's at least probably their intention.
And Bedford Road is the cutoff point between the compact area of DW Highway and the town-controlled area. So south of Bedford Road, the town controls it. North of Bedford Road, the state controls it. With that in mind, before I call you Barbara, I just wanted to reset a little bit. I allowed a little bit more public comment after we closed the public hearing, and if there's any more that we want to hear, now's your chance because we'll close it and keep it closed this time if there's no other public comment. Is that okay with everybody? Okay. Now, Barbara, thank you.
So just to clarify on which parts of the DW Highway come under the Urban Compact, which is the arrangement between the town and the state of New Hampshire DOT as far as which entity owns which parts of the Daniel Webster. At the cemetery, you'll notice that there is a sign there going south on the southbound as well as on the northbound. It's the cemetery actually that is the demarcation line for the Urban Compact. So those lights at Bedford Road are actually under the jurisdiction of the town of Merrimack. I had actually requested that we have DOT do timing studies at that light because it seems like, as you have all said, just by observation, the traffic is backing up due to the timing of the lights. And there had been no assessment of the timing since the time when the tolls were removed from exit 12, which actually increased the amount of traffic coming off of the ET onto Bedford Road. So actually, our DOT has made, our DPW has made some timing changes to the lights, and they are a little bit better than what they were a year ago. That is still a work in progress, and they don't want to mess with it too much because of the work on the ET, which is, beginning to throttle right up our section of the ET highway, as well as we will be having work happening further down as you approach Babusick Lake Road when we begin to tear apart the Daniel Webster to fix the bridge out here and the intersection off on, was it Turkey Hill Road? No, Wire Road. So there's a lot of if, ands, or buts happening there. But just for that section that we're talking about on the Bedford Road, that is the town of Merrimack. And they, like I say, they've actually done 2 timing studies there just in the past year.
Thank you for the clarification, Barbara. It's very helpful. I didn't realize that that light was on the wrong side of the sign. But you're also right about the turnpike expansion is going to throw our traffic and the town-wide upside down as it redoes the bridge by the high school and the temporary bridge through there. And
Right,
just-
because 2 of
this is
those
gonna be a
bridges
mess
as
for a
you
long
head
time.
south are being redone and rewidened and rebuilt. So fun times coming.
You bet. You bet. Okay.
If I could just find out, if you have the information, who is interested and who has looked to lease with you already, especially for those 2 units.
So this is the only lease that's signed at this point. We still don't have anyone for any of the other units. The user is homeless. They deal in furniture.
Is your microphone turned on, Kevin, or is it close
Sorry,
enough?
I'm sorry. No, it's not. Sorry. The person that will be occupying both of those units is homeless. They actually have a warehouse in Bedford, New Hampshire right now. They deal in furniture.
Okay, thank you.
And I don't know if you caught the first part, but we don't have any other leases signed at this point.
Do you have any interested parties?
I believe
Is that
our
like a
leasing folks have been.
kid-friendly place? Mm-hmm. But as a grandma, I'd like a kid-friendly place.
Oh,
but-
yeah.
Yeah. But
Well, one of the neighbors behind me spoke, kind of quoted me that there was somebody looking at something that was a restaurant, kid-friendly type thing. That didn't end up panning out. But yeah, I mean, we've got another site in another town that they're using the whole building for sporting events. They're just doing sports there, and that's something that we're open to anything, frankly.
Other comments or questions, Barbara?
Yeah, I'm still looking for that entrance. So what entrance will your new occupants be using in order to access their building? On here it says 6E32, but none of the lots are marked on this?
Oh, so there's 2 ways that they can get into this site with
It's
the
not
2
an entrance,
units.
that's the building for Flatley.
Yeah, right. They
Is
can
it
come right in off of
possible to
DW.
put your glass?
With just the 2 units occupied, they can come right in off of DW across from Webster Green.
No, it can't be. This is still the Flatley property on the back. 6 something is it's here and here, but I don't know which one is. I'm sorry.
Do you mind if I come up and take a look?
No, go ahead.
No, I want.
Yeah, it's functionally straight across the road from the Webster Green entrance.
So right now, this is paved.
Okay, so that's the entrance they're gonna be using.
Now,
Now, isn't it also being used for construction?
we're not doing any construction until the spring.
Okay, but they're coming in on April 1st. So
Well,
that's your
so
construction
our-
entrance
no,
right
our
now.
construction entrance is actually- We've got the stone pad down here.
Okay.
They come down a gravel road here. Now, that doesn't mean they don't use us to get us back out on the highway.
Yep.
But we ask them typically to come out this way where we have that gravel rumble strip for their tires.
Okay.
I don't mean to shorten you guys up, but somehow we got to stay close.
I know, I was just trying to decide how we could tell anybody where that is.
Yeah.
It looks like it's the entrance that is directly across from the,
Webster Green?
That
Yeah.
was my understanding is these 2 warehouse
little bump
units
out.
would come from that entrance across from Webster Green, which is in existence. It's paved. That's where the sign is that Lynn doesn't want lit. And then the construction entrance is from the northern part of the parcel.
Right, it comes off of the St. Gobain driveway and runs behind what will be Building C and what will be Building B. And it comes up and connects to,
So is that paved now?
that is, no, that is gravel right now.
Yeah, the construction entrance wouldn't be paved until you're finished with it. 'Cause
Well, my concern is that now we have tenants in the building. We have a non-paved entrance. And
but the
if God,
tenants aren't
for-
using that one, though. They're using the paved one.
it's not paved yet.
The center one is paved. The one across from
Okay.
at Webster Green is paved.
Okay, going into where the building is though?
Yeah.
Yes.
The
Can I
whole
take,
parking lot
I
in
can go
front
in
of them.
that and then I can take a right and it's paved?
Yes, the whole way.
Okay, because if it wasn't,
It's paved, there's an island, there's an
Okay.
island to go in, come out.
because we've got to be able to get emergency vehicles in there no matter what. Now that you have
Yeah.
you'll have tenants in the building.
The fire department was actually okay with the gravel as a secondary access. That's why we weren't going to construct that at all, but we decided to construct it, make it the construction entrance and make it the fire department entrance. And Captain Manueli, when he was still here, he
Yeah.
inspected that. And he was okay.
Well, he was being nice because we don't want trucks stuck in the gravel.
That's
We
true.
don't want truck stuff anywhere.
They don't either. Okay. Other comments or questions? I want to make sure we're monitoring our agenda and the time and not sort of getting back around to the beginning arguments again or discussions again. Nelson.
I just had a couple of comments I wanted to make with regard to the traffic analysis that was supplied to us. I found it very unintelligible. Can I use that word? It's missing a lot of commentary for a person who does not on a daily basis look at traffic analyses. To find your way through this is not easy. And I wanted to mention that in this case, I don't think it matters because we're talking such small numbers eventually anyway. And I don't think it affects this particular thing, but for future use, I would like more detail on how to read this document. Okay, just want to put that on the table.
Thank you, Nelson. I think that's a good comment. Other comments?
Could you just back up a little bit in part of your request? If I recall early on, what is the timing of you actually performing the offsite improvements? Are you just waiting till spring to get started and we're only talking about?
The okay to start working up there, and we're going to be out there getting it done. We've got the contract all signed and ready to roll.
Okay, so you have a tenant that is ready to occupy today. You're looking for approval to have them occupy now.
Ready till April 1st, but we may not be able to get going until.
Touch your microphone, Kevin.
Sorry again.
Just leave it on.
Yeah, there's going to be more.
So DOT typically will open up the okay to do the road work starting April 15th. If you get a big run of warm temperatures, sometimes they'll open that earlier. If it's snowing like crazy or freezing, it may be later.
But you have the permits you need to
We have the
start the
permit,
work now,
yes.
but you're still waiting on other permits to do what?
Other portions of DW.
Not related to the site.
Not related to the site. It's, there's going to be a section south of here where we propose a roadway and with you.
And what is your schedule? What is the duration to do that?
It should be
work?
2-3. I'm hoping no more than 2-3 days tops.
To do the widening, paving, striping is
Widening,
2-3
paving,
days?
striping.
Okay. So as soon as it opens up, you're going to widen it anyway.
As soon as it opens up, we're going to get somebody out there.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mark. And I'm sorry for calling you Kevin earlier. Jamie, you have a...
Yeah, so I know that it was brought up earlier from the public comments, just in general about how this was like light industrial. And I'm not familiar with exactly what all encompasses, I guess you're talking about retail, and it sounds like, what that's going to be coming in here potentially, if that's encompassing that. I know I guess it does. It's not just trucks, that it's also the cars. But I guess it's just my concern is, that if we're doing that, there is an increase there without this. But it sounds like it's going to be potentially being done very quickly anyway. So I'm just wondering why, I guess, to have that if you're planning on doing this anyway as soon as it opens up. And it's like right around that time of April.
We need to phase this in order to get the building permit. To get the building permit will allow us to do the improvements in here that are needed for the tenant. And we're trying to get the tenant in there by April 1st. That's why we're doing it. That's why we're doing it this way. If the tenant said, hey, we don't have to be in there until June, oh, great. Be in there in June and we'll get it going. But they've got a lease that ends. They've got to be somewhere at a certain time. This isn't really all about us. This is about their business too. And we don't want them to be sitting around with nowhere to operate their business. So we're trying to work this in a way that's responsible, as far as, not opening up 5 units because the improvements on DW can't be done till, April or mid-April. We can do 2 units without those improvements being necessary. And just so happens they need 2 units, even though one's just for storage. But that fits with what they're looking for. And this is something that we believe is, will not have any effect on anything on DW Highway as far as requiring the widening. So we'd like to do this phasing in this manner, get them in, get DW Highway widened, as soon as we can in April. I mean, fingers crossed, we've got the other project with the roadway around the back of Sanko Bend. We're still waiting on DOT for that. If we would love to have a DOT permit for the work there and bang all that out at once. But if it's not ready, it's not ready. We plan on doing this in April, regardless of what's going on.
So I guess my question is we don't have any bearing on saying anything with that widening requirement. If we say that the 2 units, we allow those 2 units, we're allowing those 2 units, and they could say that they want to do this as soon as possible, but could wait until
No, but that's the
later,
key part about
right?
his message is that if he were to do 2 units and that was all there ever was in the history of ever, he'd never have to do the widening because it's not necessary for that level of traffic. That's what the traffic analysis is for, and that's why it's part of the discussion. And so that's the comfort level that we could have, is that if it did for whatever reason stop and the 8 units stayed vacant forever, that level of traffic that's produced by 2 units doesn't cause any particular significant impact to traffic, according to the traffic analysis.
Right,
So they
that's
say.
what saying according to the traffic
And-
analysis, but when we drive up that, we see it now, and having additional in there is going to impact that traffic.
Well, there is significant traffic there, but the number of the cars that you're adding to it isn't necessarily the next conclusion that a few extra cars that come out of the site are going to make any difference at all to that level of traffic that's out there. I know that it's easy to sort of say, well, if you got traffic, adding one more car to it would have an impact, but it really doesn't. I think in terms of the timing on this, as far as the applicant goes and what impact on them and what they're, when they can fill the space and have a tenant, those are all risks that they undertook to form their business, and the timing is what it is for them. But for their tenant, having rental space that you're looking for and having it available on the time that you're expecting it to is easily the go or no go decision for starting your business, starting it this year, starting it in Merrimack, starting it at this site, and all of that stuff. And it means a great deal to opening up a business and to be a little bit quicker in the process when they're ready to go. And that's something on my mind. If it was just to the applicant and the Flatley company, and do they get a tenant, one tenant a couple of months earlier and they get a couple of months rent, that doesn't mean a hill of beans to anything. But to the applicant, to the tenant who wants to be in there and run their business, this is an enormous impact to them for a couple of months. They may, my clients would make a decision to go somewhere else if they didn't, had a 2-month wait to go from a space. These aren't my clients, obviously. Did you look like you had a comment, or you were about to make one?
So I'm watching construction everywhere right now. I think the next 10 days look pretty nice. I don't see any storms coming. So why isn't this getting done? That's, I guess, my question is, why isn't, if it's so important to get those two in there, which I think it is, why isn't it so important to get the road widened for the safety of our
So
children?
there's two aspects of it that are timing related. First is the state DOT decides when you can do construction on their road. And if they've said no, then it's no. And the other is asphalt plants don't begin generating asphalt in any volume or quantity until the weather gets right for them to do it. And so you couldn't get a contractor to come out and do it
Just having a
in
week
many
of
cases.
good weather doesn't help the asphalt plants.
Yeah.
In this case, DOT shuts down typically on November 15th. Sometimes they'll stretch it a week or two if need be, and reopen this section of United States anyway. Mid-April,
Yeah.
to weather dependent. Maybe you can open a couple weeks, and maybe they have to wait a couple weeks, whatever it might be. But other than that, that's what New Hampshire DOT basically says from November 15th, April 15th. Don't plan on doing anything because we're not going to let you. I asked them.
And DOT doesn't do that because the road won't, if you were to pave this road in winter, in the cold weather, its lifespan drops to just a couple of years. It just won't hold up the construction.
Didn't they just pave that new highway that we're driving on?
Yeah, but they're gonna repave it again because it
They're
won't
gonna
hold up.
repave it again. Well, I guess, and I'm looking at and I'm listening to, the citizens talking about, safety of their children. And I see, and I've said this before, even with the whole new condo association, Gilbert Crossing. I mean, kids are standing out there at the bus stops, and that's right where the bus stops are. And I really think that safety does come first. And are we able to get a date? I mean, are we able to get, I'm not sure how the DOT works, but I'm going to find out. But why is it that we can't get a date that, yes, this is the day we can do it? Given, yeah, maybe it goes a week because of weather.
Typically April 15th.
That's the date.
That's the date.
So that's the date that you would be able to have a contract for somebody to come in.
No, they've already got the contract.
But you have the contract, but they don't have it for the April 15th.
Right, the contract is for as soon as the DOT gives the green light, which is
Right, so-
probably April 15th, but it could be April 22nd or April 7th. Because it's the DOT and they do what they do.
And we'll plan on having our pre-construction meeting with DOT at least a month before that, just to make sure everybody's on the same page. Yep, we can get
I
paving
guess
out
what
there.
I would like to see is a date of timelines. Okay, so when is that going to happen? When is this going to happen? When is that going to happen? Because I do think that it could get pushed down, and I do think safety does come first. So that'll be me, but I won't drag this on anymore. But that's my thought. I would like to see a timeline of this is what happens first, second, third. I mean, you're telling us this.
It's weather
we don't
dependent. It's
know
going to be
this.
weather dependent. If everything goes according to plan, we'll meet with them in March, and we'll start work the second or third week of April, and hopefully we're done within 3 days or so after that. And that's the best I can give you. I mean, if it's turns warm and sunny, and we feel like we're in Florida at the beginning of March, then maybe they open up the okay to do work on the state highway. And maybe they don't. Maybe they want to be on the safe side and say, no, we're just going to wait till April 15th. But that's the best I can give you right now.
Okay, thank you.
I think you made a good comment, Maureen, about safety first. And honestly, if I had any concerns at all about safety, I wouldn't even consider voting for this. I don't. First of all, because it's a very minuscule amount of traffic. And second, the construction of the turning lanes that we're talking about here is going to make that section of DW Highway very much more complex in terms of movements that are coming and going, and the ability for people to be turning while somebody else is driving around them, and all of those kinds of things. So all of the safety concerns that you have, these turning lanes don't make that part better.
So
bus-
are
the-
we
the fact that you-
creating a more unsafe?
No, we're just creating a road just like any other road. You don't pass buses while they have their stop sign out,
You're
or the
not
police will
supposed
pull
to.
you over. And of course people do. Yeah, we all know that, but that's the law enforcement's job to police that. We don't sort of
And the
stop
driver,
development
and the
because
drivers get licenses
yeah.
and have words.
Yeah,
Okay,
absolutely. I
thank
mean, if we were restricting development because we were worried about people breaking the law or speeding or running a stop sign or something like that, there literally couldn't be one home in town, because as soon as you have one person, you got one lawbreaker.
That would be true. Thank you.
But if I had any concerns at all, even the slightest bit of concern, I wouldn't even consider voting for something like this. I wouldn't entertain it if I had concerns about safety. Was there comments over here? I thought I saw hands kind of shifting around over my shoulder.
It's interesting, down, but then just like to recap, so then you're saying is your tenants want to be in there by April 1st, and you're saying that you're planning to, a couple weeks later, if it's like an April 15th date, you're going to be starting the construction then for that road widening.
Yeah, we plan on meeting with DOT for a pre-construction meeting before April 1st, when these folks will want to move in. Get all that squared away with DOT, which includes, they're gonna have their inspectors out there inspecting the work and so on. We'll have a safety plan, cones, signs, that type of thing. Have that all squared away, okayed by DOT. They'll give us the okay. Hopefully, the weather's typical, and we can start on or right around April 15th, and hopefully in and out of there in 3 days tops. I'm hoping.
So the time between now and April, whatever, first, when your tenant's going to move in, they're like fitting up the building or doing whatever to get ready for it. So they need that time. It's not just they're waiting until April 1st, right?
Yeah, I mean, I believe, don't hold me to the exact time, but their lease at the other spot ends somewhere around April 1st, give or take a week maybe. But yeah, so we need to do the fit ups. We need to get everything squared away and, specific to their need and their use.
So that's why we're here on February 6th talking about a tenant that needs it in April 1st. Because they've got
Yeah, and then, and I planned on being in here last month when we had the snowstorm and that meeting got postponed. We're kind of cutting it tight, but we talk in the office. We're still confident we can get all the fit ups done by April 1st.
whether or not I was going to miss that meeting because I wasn't in town, but no, it was Arctic in Alabama though. It was 10 degrees in Alabama that week. Closed the whole university. Other comments or questions?
I'm set to go.
Okay, what is the will of the board with respect to whatever disposition you'd like to take of this application, of this request?
I'll make a motion to find that with the proposed conditions of approval, the application meets all applicable regulatory requirements necessary, and further to grant conditional final approval to the application subject to the recommended conditions of approval presented in the staff memo dated January 11th, 2024, which does include the fact that it's 2 units, not 3.
Is there a second for Lynn's motion? Count Mark Nelson, you want to be at the second?
Sure. Yeah.
Nelson.
Yeah.
You probably seconded like 10,000 things over the years,
Probably.
right? or you're the chair for most of it, so you probably didn't second much of anything those years. Okay. Any further discussion? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Opposed.
1 opposed, 2 opposed, 3 opposed. Any abstain? So 4 to 3 to 0, the motion passes.
Oh, good. I missed the count. Who voted opposed?
Jamie, Barb, and Maureen.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay,
Yeah.
so 430. You are all set.
Thanks.
Okay. Where's my agenda? The next item on our agenda is item 5. FPL LLC is the applicant and owner. Continued conceptual discussion regarding a potential lot line adjustment. The parcels are located at 427 and 429 Daniel Webster Highway and an unnumbered parcel off Railroad Avenue in the C2 Commercial, I1 Industrial, Aquifer Conservation, Town Center, and Elderly Housing Overlay Districts. Tax map 5D4, lots 75, 76, and 78. It's case planning board 2024-4, and it is also continued from the January 16th planning board meeting. Casey, is there anything that we need to know before we hear from the applicant?
Nothing other than I want to emphasize that this is just a conceptual meeting, not a public hearing. There's no formal application before the board tonight.
Thank you for that reminder, Casey. And I guess if there are any abutters or interested citizens who are here to hear about this application, just to offer the distinction for what a conceptual review is. The applicant's looking for the board's feedback on what may eventually become his application, but for now, no vote or approval is occurring. with that in mind, please introduce yourself and tell us about your proposal.
Good evening.
Touch the microphone and make sure it's turned on, or make sure that light's really bright. When it's
Or it's
on,
close
there's
to
no
you.
doubt.
It's on now.
Beautiful. Okay, yeah, I can hear the difference.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, my name is Mike Pluff. I'm a land surveyor with Fieldstone Land Consultants. I'm here tonight to represent Mark Rivet and to discuss a potential lot line adjustment between tax map parcels 5D-4-78 and 5D-4-75. We requested a preliminary hearing as there may be more than one avenue to achieve our goal. Our goal is mainly to have some feedback from the board if possible. Presently, 5D-4-78, which is this blue outlined lot right here, and it goes all the way to DW and back. Contains 7.9 acres, and it has 74 feet of what I call technical frontage along Daniel Webster Highway. The other lot is this pink outline lot right there, which is 5D-4-75. It contains 0.3 acres, and it has roughly 70 feet of frontage. Both lots are in the general commercial zone, C2, as well as the town center overlay zone. And I believe you mentioned it was in the elderly zone, overlay zone as well. What we'd like to do is to merge the frontage area of lot 78, which is this yellow area right here, with the pink lot, which is 75, and then leave the remainder as a non-buildable lot. Presently, the frontage portion of lot 78 is basically technical frontage. There really is no physical frontage right there. You could not access that lot from there, as there's a guardrail, a bridge, a severe drop to the Sahuagin River. A fair amount of lot 78, which is this blue area up here, is already unusable for development due to wetlands, floodway, and floodplain. So classifying a non-buildable lot would serve as kind of a conservation area, if you will. Meanwhile, lot 75, the pink lot, would gain a much needed area and additional frontage. We believe the other option would be to seek a frontage relief from the ZBA, however, being that we'd like to classify this as a non-buildable lot through the lot line adjustment process. We were hoping this board could save us from that effort. So with that, that's just a brief rundown of what we're trying to do, but we're certainly looking for the board's advice on how to achieve our goals.
Functionally, what does the pink lot gain by having that extra space?
Well, here, I can switch to a closer view here. So the pink lot, the corner of that building is pretty much right at the lot line. And even to go around that building, you're technically going on to the adjacent lot, which is Mr. Rivet's lot. If he's trying to repair siding, painting, roof, or whatever, there's going to be some amount of encroachment just to work on that side of the building. The owner of that lot would gain all this area right here as his own.
The pink one is not owned by Mr. Rivet, just the blue one?
It is not.
Oh, I thought you had all of those in that room.
John Dunn.
Okay. So it gives that guy a little bit of his own lawn space back, or the lawn that's out there. And like you said, it isn't accessible because it's hidden by a bridge anyway. There's a green area on here that you've shown as the potential access to the blue lot. And is that just sort of checking the box so you have access, or is there some intention that the blue lot could be restored to a buildable status at some point?
I don't believe that's the goal here is to have access to get to this blue lot. Right now, there are cross easements. There's a drainage easement. There's a parking easement. They all benefit the funeral home right here. So if we did technically take away the frontage, we're suspecting that the board may wish to have some sort of access to get to the back, the blue lot.
Now, the parking lot that's shown on the blue lot there, it isn't constructed. That's approved a few years ago, but never constructed. Is that right?
It is Mark Rivet, owner of Rivet Funeral Home, and the property and subject properties. Yes, that back section in that where the that diamond design is with the drainage and everything, that is constructed. It has been for 2 years now.
Okay. It's paved back there?
That
or that's
is
gravel?
that is basically an as-built plan right there.
Okay.
Yep.
When you look at the satellite picture, it looks like it's just a gravel lot or dirt.
That was taken in the process.
Long enough
Yep.
ago. Okay, so that's actually a paved
So
parking
that
lot
is
with
paved,
a guardrail. and
drainage
everything.
is all in, rocks are along the edge. Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
I got you.
And actually, that yellow section, I'll be honest, the pink section, I forget what lot number that is.
75.
That pink section has been maintaining that lot for probably about 30 years of mowing.
It looked
you
nice
know,
in the picture that Lynn showed me.
And I do have an old aerial picture if anybody wants to see if they're not familiar with the property. I do have an aerial picture here. It's older, but it shows that guardrail and everything. But yeah, you can't walk on his property or
Yeah.
put a ladder up or do anything without, in theory, going on the yellow section. They only own 3 or 4 feet, I think it is.
Right.
Yeah. Now, if I remember right, that parking lot that you're building, or that you already built on the blue lot
Correct.
for the benefit of the funeral home and the other properties,
Yep.
it has a guardrail along the back edge, and it kind of drops off pretty sharp from there.
Yes, and that's part of the, I'll
Yeah.
say, issue with the yellow section is there's never been a time that you could ever, even if the guardrail wasn't there, drive a vehicle to go from Route 3, Daniel Webster Highway, out to the back where it says area to be added to the pink. You could never make it. There's never been any way to access a vehicle down to that lower section.
I think as you get to the back, it might get wetter, but
Oh, it
the-
drops off like, 30, 40 feet, it drops off there.
Yeah, the closer to the river it does. The only reason for commenting all of that stuff is the green access easement to the blue lot doesn't seem terribly necessary to me if the only part of the blue lot you can access is within that guardrail for that parking lot. You still can't get to the 7 acres behind it.
Correct.
And you know, if it's
The
wetlands,
only,
it's
the
not
only
buildable.
usable easement would be possibly eventually on the Railroad Ave side down at the end where there's a vacant lot and things down at the end of Railroad Ave. That is accessible. There used to be an old dirt path that we used to play, in when we were kids and stuff. That would be accessible to that lower section. But anything up in this area, it's a 40-foot drop.
Okay.
Yep.
So in terms of your choices about which way to do that, I think the way that you suggested as a lot line adjustment as opposed to a variance to get relief for the pink lot or something, the lot line adjustment obviously seems easier to me, and I don't have any objection to it as long as that blue lot is designated as unbuildable and nobody sort of comes back later and asks for some further planning board relief to make it buildable again in some way.
And it's landlocked.
Oh, it's landlocked and there's no frontage once you do this, so
Correct.
you're
Yep.
stuck.
I mean, the only way, if anybody ever wanted to try to access that, I'll say 8 acres, would not be from any of the properties in this upper section. It would have to be down from the lower side. and obviously they would be back here. But the elevations are, half of that area I think is below the river level. I'm, you know,
When you're talking about designating it as unbuildable, in what way are you thinking of designated? Is it a permanent easement or a conservation easement put over that blue parcel, or?
I think the town already has it as a unbuildable lot. I think on the tax record, it says right on it, unbuildable lot and no legal accessible road frontage. I think it's how it's worded.
Although if you created it from the green lot or that green
You
easement,
could always buy one of those properties.
But you can't,
he owns all those properties.
you can't, from that green easement that he put the checker
Yeah, you can't
mark,
get anywhere.
You can't, you know, I don't know if you could get a four-wheeler up it.
The green
You could
easement.
walk it,
The
but
green easement is worthless.
the green easement is worthless.
There's absolutely no
We
reason to
just
even
figured
consider
that
putting it in
possibly
it.
the board would
Want
want
some sort of
something.
access.
Not
on-
that.
But
Yeah, if you're declaring it unbuildable on a permanent basis, I don't need you to have an easement to access it at all.
yeah, like I say, I
You
I can be
can't
corrected,
access
but
it
I
from
think,
that green
I think the
easement.
town
You
has
can't.
the lot 78 already listed as an unbuildable, no accessible legal road frontage. It
So
doesn't say no legal road frontage, because you do right
Yeah.
now, but it's not usable.
a notation like that in the GIS system or in the tax maps or something may not be binding on a planning or zoning board. So,
okay, that's
but if you do put a restriction that's recorded at the Registry of Deeds, that it would be a permanent establishment of a unbuildable status.
Would,
And
would
that's
the
fine.
board entertain, well, obviously, we would have a note on the plan to that, but what if, is the board gonna want it to say permanent? Or if someone did buy 3 of those lots down there and amalgamate them all into one?
You could be, you could do that.
Yeah, but.
Yeah, I think a
but-
note that said unless actual road frontage is reestablished,
Okay, all right,
it's unbuildable and not through an easement across properties. But
okay.
and I don't know how that would happen, but yeah, I mean, I wouldn't foreclose it forever, but it would take actual real road frontage by a lot merger from some place to make that buildable again. I wouldn't want to see somebody sort of argue that they can, because they'll find, engineers are really smart. They'll like build an Amazon warehouse back there or something and have a place that the trucks can come in by helicopter or something.
Guess we got our answer.
Drones, yeah, fly some drones in there. Are there specific questions other than the choice between lot line adjustment versus variance that you wanted to make sure the board talked through in the conceptual?
No, actually, I knew it could go both ways. I don't know if the ZBA would be amenable to granting zero frontage, but the lot line adjustment sounds reasonable, and obviously the back of that lot it's in the floodplain, it's in the floodway, there's wetlands on it, there's really not much you can do with it.
Yeah, I can't speak for the ZBA for how it makes decisions, but knowing what the 5 criteria are that they've got to meet for variances, it's much easier to come to the planning board to look for a lot line adjustment than it is to try to address those 5 criteria in a situation like this. So I don't have any objection to the overall scheme of what you've got proposed and planned there. Is there intention by the owner of the pink lot to expand his building into that yellow area once it's his?
I don't know the answer to that.
There's no setback.
You can't.
Well, there's a little bit of setback. There's,
Not enough.
well, I mean, it depends on what you're trying to add. But anyway, I just want to answer the question.
The slopes prevent that, I
Yeah,
think.
not that I foresee. It's more green space and, again, yeah.
Understood. That's what I wanted to hear. I suspected that was the case. I just wanted to hear it out loud.
No,
Okay.
be a lot of work, I think, to add 10 feet.
Lynn?
Is this out of the goodness of your heart, or did the owner of 429 come to you and say, can I get this?
He asked
Okay.
because again,
That makes
because
sense.
to
That-
work on his place and
I know, John. So,
and
yeah.
again, yep. I mean,
Okay.
him and Gary prior to that, Gary Brueggemann owned it. Like I say, they've been mowing it for years and just kind of used it as theirs. So, just put it on paper, I guess.
Yeah. Okay. If this was an application before the board, I would look favorably upon it. I don't have any major hangups on this myself. I don't know if others would have limits.
No,
I don't know if there's
fine
any
with it.
specific
Yeah,
requirements.
Makes sense.
I don't really care much about whether the easement is there, the access easement is there, because it doesn't really go anywhere. So
We'll take
you
it
could
off.
you could put it
Take
there
it
for
off.
technical reasons, but yeah, just get rid of
It's
it.
worthless.
The only other question, oh, I'm sorry, I
Go ahead.
didn't know if you were done.
Yes.
The other question I had was, when we go to file the lot line adjustment application, there's a significant checklist. Would the board be amenable to waivers from some of the items on that checklist? Topography, wetlands delineation. I mean, we're not really changing, and we're not proposing any improvements. So we're just adding the land to the pink area. I guess what I'm trying to do is cut down on the cost of field, going out, doing the field work, in order to accomplish something that may not be needed, I guess.
So waivers on a lot of those provisions are possible. I think work with the staff to find out whether they would look favorably upon it, and their recommendation to us carries a lot of weight. One of the questions that often comes up is the setting monuments. And I think that's probably one we would be less inclined to waive, because if you're creating new lot lines and new corners on the lot, somebody's got to go put those on the ground. But in terms of, a lot of the other things like wetlands delineation and all that kind of thing, I don't have any drive to see all of those kinds of things. In lot line adjustments, they may be simpler than site plan and subdivision reviews. And so some of those things might not even be applicable. But work with the staff and let them guide you to what they think is a reasonable waiver to ask for. And for the most part, we're pretty amenable to waivers and things like that, as long as they make sense. If there's something that you want to waive that we really needed to know, then we will push back.
Sure.
That said, if you I don't pick a thing that we would normally require in a site plan. This isn't a site plan. You wouldn't have a lighting plan, but if you wanted if you proposed a waiver of a lighting plan and we wanted one, it would be a condition of approval that you go create one. It wouldn't be that you can't get a vote that night till you come back with a lighting plan, typically.
Okay.
But
Yeah,
thoughts?
I have no problem with this. This makes sense because of the topography and the lay of the land and
Yeah.
yeah.
I mean, if the blue lot wasn't wetlands and basically really hard to access, I would not be love the idea of creating a
Be a different
landlocked
pla-
lot.
Yeah.
But with this particular property, knowing what it is and what's going on, it is what it is. Okay. So we don't have to take a vote or do anything else to close the discussion on this item unless you have more questions of us. Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Thank you. Item 6 on our agenda is Planning and Zoning Administrator's Report and discussion and possible action regarding other items of concern. Casey, do you have a report for us?
Nope, I have nothing for you tonight.
Does any member of the board have questions for staff?
No.
Nope. Does any member of the board have any discussion or possible action regarding other items of concern? Good, I like that. Then we are on to our next agenda item, which is 7, the approval of the minutes of 2 meetings, December 19 and January 16. January 19, 23, January 16, 24.
And I move we approve both as presented.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion is second to approve both sets of minutes as presented. Discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye?
I
Any opposed? Any abstaining? 700 to approve the minutes. I think we're all out of agenda. Item 8 is adjourned.
So moved.
Is there a second? All in favor say aye.
To
Any
where?
opposed? Any abstaining? Okay, we are officially adjourned. Don't forget to turn your mic.